Okay, hey everyone. So I'm going to introduce to you today my good friend Natalie Mann, and I've known Nat for coming up to 10 years now. We met through some common spiritual interests, you might say. And I wanted to bring Nat on for a chat today because she's one of the most qualified people that I know to talk about useful and practical ways, techniques and tips that you can integrate into your daily life um, on a daily basis to really support you with this phase 4 of our healing program. So healing the core, really getting to the core level of our healing process and healing the mind and soul, and our emotional self. So specifically through the powers of essential oils, and also helping you to understand how this works, and I guess why essential oils work so well on this level. So I feel that Nat is one of the very few people that I know actually have a really deep understanding of this, and it's currently one of Nat's main passions. She's teaching people how they can use essential oils to really powerfully shift things on this level, and to help us to open and heal the heart, and even in releasing old emotional pain and trauma from our bodies, if we're wanting to go there. So, Nat, firstly, I just want to ask you, firstly, is that an accurate introduction? And secondly, do you want to just briefly just talk about how you're currently working with people in this area, perhaps a little bit about your background, that kind of thing?
Sure. So I've been a massage therapist for over 15 years. I've done a lot of emotional body work with people. About 5 years ago, I was introduced to the concept of essential oils, but I didn't really know what to do with it. I've seen some beautiful shifts occur for people when they are in a place where they can trust their practitioner to hold a space to just allow them to feel whatever happens for them on a massage table. I've studied and observed from massaging where the knots and the lumps and the bumps are, and got some intuitive insight around what those feelings are and what certain heat represents in the body and why certain feelings come up in certain parts of the body. So I've always found that really fascinating. And I've noticed that regardless of the person, the emotion is the same in the same part of the body. So there's this beautiful theme that runs across us despite what our stories or our past trauma or life story may be. And so when I was introduced to essential oils, I really wanted to know if I could incorporate that further into that kind of work that I really like to do. And I was really shocked at how it helped people to really soften, to really allow themselves to get to that core like you're talking about, and gain insight and gain awareness so that they can have the courage of, okay, I understand a little bit what that's about now, rather than just sort of being afraid of what's inside of me that needs healing. It's not something to be scared of. And essential oils have a beautiful way of just kind of leading us in that direction. They don't do the work for us. We have to do that ourselves. But they definitely help us to drop into a softer place within ourselves, where we can be a little bit more open to whatever it is that needs to be healed next.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the
And
way you
currently,
describe that.
sorry, John.
Yeah, you go.
So currently I'm teaching people different concepts around essential oils, and work sometimes in the physical capacity to help people gain strength within their physical bodies. But I'm also now working in a retreat capacity to show people how they can really delve a little bit deeper, start learning what self-reflection really looks like, and how to connect to how they're really feeling within their bodies. So that when they go away from a retreat, it's not just this profound thing that they did for 3 days, it's something they can go home and actually practice at home.
Beautiful.
And reach for it when they're feeling a little lost or a little overwhelmed, as the average person in today's world can feel that way a lot.
Perfect. So it's really giving someone practical tools that they can actually integrate into their everyday life, like in a real sense.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so love to ask you to speak more specifically now to the areas that we're looking at within the program, and we might just break that down into two groups or two questions. So, firstly, if you could talk about healthy ways of dealing with stress and how essential oils can help us with that, as well as using the oils or any other specific tips that you might have for people around really connecting with themselves. If
Yeah,
we're
sure,
in this
sure.
really detuned place, how can they really connect back into their bodies and really get sort of out of the head and back into the heart, that grounding and reconnecting?
Yeah, for sure. So there's a couple of things that I really encourage people to do. So I also am teaching yoga, and I use aromatherapy in yoga. I use essential oils really to help people connect to their bodies. So the first thing is we need to understand that when we inhale something that is a pure essential oil, it affects the limbic region of the brain. So it has this effect inside of us. um, they say that the limbic region of the brain is where all of our memories are stored. Now, I believe that that's kind of the seat of our soul. It's the physical part of the body that connects us to the soul, because, I feel that our soul contains all of our memories and our feelings. So when we want to connect to that part of us, it's fragrance that will lead us there very quickly. So that's one of the beautiful
Mm.
aspects of essential oils when we're looking to do that. The other thing is sometimes, so you talked about stress. I run a couple of different businesses, so my stress levels can get pretty high pretty quick. And I get overwhelmed from time to time. And in my overwhelm of the busyness of life, sometimes I can feel really lost. And so there is, as I've shared with you before, Sam, there's a particular oil that I favour in that situation. It's an oil called Humility. It's a beautiful blend, but what that particular blend does for me is it allows me to just sit in my overwhelm, allow myself to just feel overwhelmed, but not tell myself a story. Too easy. We move from the space of overwhelm to the intellectual place in our head that says, well, what's going on? Why can't I resolve this? What's my issue? What's my issue? And that sometimes contributes to my lost feeling, because I'm trying to get into my head, trying to work it all out. I don't
Mm.
have an answer. So all I do is heighten my stress. I heighten my overwhelm. And
Mm.
the beautiful thing about the oil is it softens me to just sit in a quieter place. Sometimes I have a little bit of a cry because I actually need to, because I am so overwhelmed
Mm.
and I've put myself into this overwhelmed position. And then 9 times out of 10, always, I will have this absolute revelation about what's really going on for me. And in particular, the first time I noticed this happened, I realised I wasn't being truthful with how I felt about a course, not a course as in a learning course, but as in a particular direction that I was heading in my life. I didn't want to go that way, but I felt obligated to do it. And this oil helped me just soften to the truth of, actually, I don't have to go that way. But in the place of overwhelm and obligation and stress and getting the job done, I couldn't see clearly that that's truly how I felt within myself. So the beautiful thing about oils is sometimes they can just soften us to that place where we can start to be a bit more honest about what's going on.
Mm.
And once we really know, then we can relax. I didn't have to be stressed because I knew what my overwhelm was. Oh, I'm doing something I actually don't want to do. And the beauty of that was then I had the ability to choose differently. So I could, use my will in a different direction and relieve that stress. So sometimes our stress and this overwhelm that we sit in, and humility is a beautiful oil, but frankincense might do the same. Or, there's
Mm.
lots of different emotional applications for different essential oils, depending on what you're trying to achieve. I just happen to like that particular oil, so I know it works for me. So when I'm in that place, because I've had success with it, that's the oil I will reach for to help me get really honest with myself. But
Mm.
more than that, just helped me to soften into my own process, and rather than try to work it out, just allow my feeling to surface to say, this is how I
Mm.
really feel. And that's the honest place, not an intellectual, oh, I've got to be honest with myself. It's an emotional, wow, this is how I really feel. Oops.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a bit of an oops that goes with it, because you've committed to something, and then you go, holy goodness, I don't actually want to do that now. And you're invested in it. So then there's this whole other stuff that, potentially you've got to look at. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And like you said, that place of trying to work something out or trying to control an outcome of some kind, it really contracts us and just kind of compounds that place, doesn't it? Whereas, as you use that word beautifully, it's, if we can get into that softened kind of place of allowance, that's when things can start to really shift.
Yeah, for sure. And when we're in that trying to resolve it place, or trying to work it out, we're really not, we just don't have a clue. We'll randomly reach for anything to try and resolve it. And sometimes we'll reach for things that aren't necessarily good for us. Like food. For me, food is one of my addictive patterns, which is why your beautiful True Healing naturally has, unfolding nicely for me, because it's getting me to look really honestly about, well, how do I use food to kind of stuff that feeling down?
Yeah.
So that we have to be careful when we are feeling stressed. Sometimes it's a really uncomfortable feeling to sit with. But as I said before, the beauty of essential oils is they can just soften you into that place. I know as a yoga instructor, people don't know how to be still anymore. It's
Yeah.
just to sit and be
Yeah.
is part of the allowing, and it's part of the self-reflection, and it's part of the surrendering to what you're feeling. And we busy ourselves so that we don't have to feel.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful.
Oils are beautiful for creating that quiet, still place.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. No, you described that beautifully. And it really relates back to that second part of the question, doesn't it? Because it's really so powerful to, like, when we step out of the head and the trying and the control and the trying to distract ourselves, and stepping back into that place of allowance, and all of a sudden we're actually connected to ourselves, we're actually
Yeah.
in our bodies, and our hearts can start to open and we can start to really feel ourselves again. Hey.
Yeah, and what's beautiful about that is, something that is a common theme that I see, that people come to my retreats, or they come for a treatment or a massage from me. They often feel like they've lost their passion for life, they've lost their joy, and it's not that they've lost it; it's just that they're disconnected from it. It's still in them. Their desire and passion for life is still there. It's just like, if you could imagine a very dim candle that just needs a little bit of fanning to bring the flame alive. But we have to bring our attention and our focus to it. And so,
Okay.
we can have more joy, and we can have more, follow our heart, follow our passion, and have these amazing lives when we really honor what we feel, when we just
Yeah.
start digging up what's going on for me.
Yeah.
And get rid of, and become aware of, well, what is it in my life that I don't like and don't want anymore, that I've just been saying yes to for
Yeah.
probably too long.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really good way to emphasize, how we're talking about using food and other things to distract from our emotions. Whereas, because what we're doing in that place is we're saying no to our emotional self. We're going, I don't want to feel. And what happens then is that it shuts down all emotion, doesn't it? And that's when we do become quite almost numb, detuned, and there's not much joy in that at all, is there?
Yeah.
We shut down all the good stuff as well. Hey.
Yeah, that's right. And like the course that you guys have outlaid, and created for people to follow, is so beautiful in the way that it starts off by addressing your phase one of looking at the foods that we reach for that are highly addictive, the things like the sugar and the coffee. I still like my coffee. I'm working on that addiction, but I'm really reluctant to let it go, the things like wheat and all of these things that are just everyday norm that we don't realize create so much inflammation in the body. And so the fact that you guys give us this beautiful path to start with our physical and then move forward to flushing our cells and even like the CBD oil component that then nourishes and just calms and soothes that part of our body, then brings us into this beautiful place ready for phase 4, where if we want to be holistic in the way that we look at our health, we have to consider our emotional aspect of who we are, because we are primarily emotional people, emotional beings. And what's amazing about that is, that I get excited about, is you can't be emotional and not start to grow spiritually as well. It's like the side benefit. We start to uncover ourselves spiritually as well. And I think that's a really important part of our growth in our holistic love for ourselves and care for ourselves.
Yeah, I think it's a really nice correlation you've made there, Nat. It's like, quite often people have this sense that spirituality is maybe this kind of airy-fairy thing. But in reality, it's a very grounded thing, isn't it? It's very much about coming back to yourself and being here, present, here and now, whatever that brings, however you're feeling, wherever you're at.
Yeah.
Sometimes swearing and cursing and punching a pillow is more spiritual than sitting down and meditating.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. I've got a punching bag hanging in my carport. Because some days, yoga won't cut it. Sometimes there's just too much going on.
Yeah.
And we need an outlet, but we need a safe one. We need one that's not going to hurt other people. I mean, you only have to look at the world that we live in to see that hurt people that carry pain will inevitably at some point hurt other people. So, one of the biggest things about, I guess, the use of oils and emotional work is it helps us to really get real about what we feel. And then when we know what that is, we can start being personally responsible. We can start taking some action and saying, well, I'm not going to blame that person because I'm angry right now. I'm just angry. Sure, they triggered it, but it's my anger. What am I going to do with it? I can dump it on that other person that triggered it and blame them, but it doesn't resolve my anger if I do that. Whereas if I bring it back to myself and go, gosh, how many times in my life have I been made to feel this angry? What am I angry about? What am I frustrated about here? If we can dig into that and sit with it, go punch a punching bag if need be.
Yeah,
we're dealing with it safely, and we're taking that personal responsibility, and that helps us heal. And eventually we may even see the person who triggered the anger as the gift to our healing, because without them triggering it, we may not have discovered it.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So before we move into like talking about that and talking about sort of looking at the emotions that have become built up inside of us, would you like to maybe share a couple of things, maybe your favorite tips, something that people can kind of take away with them and, integrate into their life, maybe a tip or two that they can try with essential oils that they have, or, they might want to consider sort of trying to, if they're stressed, having a strategy to work with that. If they're feeling really like disconnected and heady and thoughts racing and out of their body, they can have something to work with that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Absolutely. I'm just going to grab an oil so I can show you what to do with it, if that's all right.
Okay, fantastic.
I'm going to use a blend called Chivalry, because, chivalry is a nice notion. It's about kindness and compassion to people. So what I do is I just drop the oil into my hand, and I usually use 1 or 2 drops. And I always circle 3 times clockwise, just because I feel that 3 is a sacred number. Some people like to believe in the Holy Trinity. For me, it represents, my soul, my spirit, my body. And what I do then is I take my hands and I just gently place my fingertips on my forehead so that I can just inhale the oil. Now, sometimes you're going to breathe really shallow. So I want you to think about breathing from your belly. Okay. Sometimes that's just that ability to just stop. And the simple fact that you reach for an oil and put it on you and anoint yourself with it is enough to get yourself to be doing something different. You're immediately thinking about something different. You're reaching for something that's going to soothe your soul and allow it to calm, regardless of what's going on around you. Okay, so that's a beautiful aspect about inhaling the oils. Now, for those of your watchers that really struggle with the whole intellectual thing, because I have problems with that, I want to encourage them to stand on one foot. So I'm going to demonstrate that for you. You're not going to be able to see me real well, but if we just bring our hands into our heart center, in yoga, it's called our heart center. It's also called our prayer position, but just lightly touching the fingers and then just shifting your weight to rest one foot on the side of the calf, okay? And just allow yourself to just stand, and potentially if you bring your hands a little higher, you can continue to breathe the oil. Now, by doing that, when we engage balance postures, you can't think about anything else, because as soon as you do, you'll wobble. So when your mind starts to wander and you start wobbling all over the place, take a breath. Bring yourself back to the focus of your breath and your balance, and that's going to help ground you. And then you can start asking yourself the questions of like, what am I really feeling in this situation? Why am I so stressed today? What's going on around me that feels perhaps a little bit beyond my control, that maybe is causing me to be in a heightened state of and overwhelm? They are the 2 primary things that I share with most people that work every single time. And I would encourage people, if you're going to stand on one leg, do it for 2 minutes and then change legs and do it for 2 more minutes. Now, sometimes people don't have great balance, and that's okay. Get a chair in front of you and just place your hands on the chair, at the back of the chair, and still stand on one leg. And the beauty is you can then close your eyes and really focus on your breath. In that place, then you're really thinking about your breath. You're thinking about all the muscles that are holding you, because they'll get sore after 2 minutes. You'll be like, whoa, this is hard work. Who thought standing on one leg would be such hard work? But suddenly you're very aware of what your body's feeling. You're very aware of your breathing, and the stress of what's going on around you pales in comparison to that. That's the place where we start connecting to ourselves. And then from that, maybe you could just start asking yourself some questions. What do I want in this situation? How am I feeling in this environment? Do I need to remove myself? Do I need to say no to someone and I'm worried about what they might think? Do I need to say yes to someone but I'm scared about what that might entail? You know, there's lots of different scenarios that we could talk about, but in any given situation, balance, breath, and if you can combine an essential oil with it, they are the 3 key things that will stop you, allow you to be still just for a few minutes, and then from that you can regroup and make a different decision.
Beautiful. I love that. Thank you for that.
No problem.
Okay, so now to the second part of what I'd love to hear from you about. How can essential oils assist people to release trapped emotional energy or old trauma from the body so that they are able to start moving towards a much deeper and more permanent, or long-term healing in specific areas?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, oils won't do the work for you, okay? So what I found with oils is they lessen my resistance. They bring me into a softer place that allows me to be kind to myself. I've had quite considerable trauma in my life, And I find it to be quite frightening, the thought of having to deal with those emotions. So there's a particular oil blend that I really like. It's called Sarah, and Sarah has the most magnificent fragrance, and it stands for sexual and ritual abuse. Now, a lot of people might hear that and go, "Oh my God," but the reality is, when you live in an environment where, or work in an environment where you are constantly demanded at, constantly controlled, constantly oppressed, that is ritual abuse. So whether it's from your childhood or in your adulthood, at some level, we've all experienced some sort of ritualistic abuse. It may be verbal, it could be manipulative and emotional, it could be physical. But we are carrying all these little traumas where we shake it off and we pretend like it doesn't matter, but we disregard our own feelings of hurt in that place. So those emotions can be quite scary, because sometimes there's a lot of grief associated. And a lot of my clients will say to me, "I'm terrified to start crying because I'm worried I won't stop." Well, I can assure you, you will. And, your soul and your body will allow you to express what it needs to for as long as it needs to, and then it'll stop. And then you might have another wave of it. So grief is a beautiful thing that comes in waves. Sometimes we can see it coming, sometimes it floors us. And either way, that's okay. But the beautiful thing about using oils to start shifting this is you are choosing an essential oil with an intention. Now, intention and desire are the same thing, and there's so much power in that. When you select an oil for yourself and go, "You know what? I want to change the controlling behavior that I have, or I want to change being a victim of people controlling me," whatever the scenario. When you choose an oil and anoint yourself with that, you are deciding to allow yourself to be shown what needs to be healed, to be shown what you can feel about those things. And the one thing that I have definitely noticed with essential oils is you don't put an oil on somebody and suddenly they have a meltdown. It just doesn't work like that. It's like, if you can imagine trying to pull weeds out of a dry, hard ground versus watering the weed softly first and then it just easily coming out.
Yeah, nice and
The
hard.
oil is like the water, it just kind of softens our space to allow us to then dig a little deeper and start shifting those things for ourselves. And I'd encourage some journaling with it, but I'll give you a beautiful example. There's an oil blend called Release that I absolutely love. And I was at an expo. A girlfriend came to help me, and she was really, really scared about talking to people. She didn't want to talk to people about oils. She said, "Can I just watch?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely. You can do whatever you like. But let's try something." So we got this oil Release and we dripped it on her wrist. And I said, "Rub it 3 times clockwise. And I want you to say what it is you want to release today." And she said, "I want to release my fear of talking to people." Within 20 minutes, she was conversing with everybody that walked past the expo stand. She had no issue with it. It was like and I looked at her and she didn't even notice, that's what the beautiful thing was. It just suddenly shifted for her. And I said to her at the end of the day, "You did all right for someone who was really nervous about talking to people." And she was like, "Oh my goodness." And that's the power of intention. When we decide, I'm not going to dance around my emotional stuff anymore, I want to do something about it, we can reach for something to assist us. Now, there'll be times where nothing happens. So we need to change our question. So maybe we need to say, "Okay, I thought I wanted to deal with this, but nothing's showing me that I'm ready to deal with whatever the issue may be." So maybe then use the oil to say, "Why don't I want to deal with it?" Because it's okay not to deal with our emotional stuff. Ultimately, it will make us sick in the end. And, pain and suffering generally goes with that sickness. So that's not ideal. Hence why we've got this beautiful protocol that you've got out, laid out for people. But we have the right to choose. We have the right to deny. If we think we're choosing, heal and resolve something, but it's not happening, then maybe the question we need to ask with intention is, why don't I want to resolve this? What am I holding on to? What am I invested in that would allow me to hold on to this issue?
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, that's really beautiful, Nat. That is really powerful stuff. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I feel like that's been really valuable in giving people, yeah, a deeper understanding of how this can work. And I love how you've brought in a little bit of the science too. You know, I find that very often when people see that there's a solid science to this, you know, it's not just fluff and guff, or, you know, woo-woo as some people like to call it. And this can really help people to open up to the possibilities here. And like you said, it doesn't have to be this big scary thing.
No, it's a gentle process. And you know, I think one of the things that has been the problem in today's world is we place massive expectations on ourselves. We are hard with ourselves. We are our own worst critics. Our internal critic can be pretty mean. And this lack of compassion for ourselves and this expectation that we should have it all sussed and all worked out, and, you know, it's just meanness. We've got to stop doing it. We've just got to stop. We need to recognize that, yep, we've all got some stuff. Yep, there's a healing journey unfolding, and it started at phase 1, or they wouldn't even be listening right now. But you have a bunch of seekers there, you know, these beautiful people that are listening to your videos and watching and incorporating these methods of healing that you're talking about, are seeking to know themselves. Guys, be kind, be compassionate, use your intention to help heal yourself further, and use an oil if you need to, if that's going to help you. It's helped me. It's helped hundreds of people that I've worked on. And I cannot encourage you enough to, you know, reach for God's beautiful garden or the nature's emporium that is at our disposal, in order to soften ourselves, to remain in that compassionate place when we start uncovering some of those traumas and letting them go and shifting through them.
Yeah. Really, really powerful words, compassion and self-love.
Yeah.
Such a perfect way to finish, Nat. Thank you.
So
I hope you guys got loads of value from that. And yeah, please let us know. I'm sure Nat would really love some feedback too, and be really happy if you wanted to ask questions, put things out there, you know, really open to go a bit deeper into discussion with people on this and offer a bit of support too. So thank you so much for spending that time with us, Nat. Really, really
my
grateful.
absolute pleasure. One of my favourite subjects, hey?
You can tell.
Yeah. I'm a little bit sunburnt today. I was a bit too much sun yesterday. So I'm feeling a bit hot and flushed. Yeah, and I'm nervous. But hey, I'm owning that.
Really well. Shared it just so beautifully and eloquently. So thank you.
Thank you for asking me. I really appreciate that. And I love the opportunity to share with people. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions. I do know a little bit more of specific oils with specific emotions. So if that's of use to people and they feel drawn to a particular oil, happy to answer any questions there.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Nat. And thank you for listening, everyone. Okay.
Have a great day.
See ya.